Welcome to another episode of the Rollwise podcast, the weekly show where we talk about anything related to tabletop RPGs, news, the games, and all the fun stuff. In this episode, we're going to take a look at D&D Beyond's wrap-up for 2023, and boy, was it a doozy. I like numbers, and this was one of those situations in which D&D Beyond finally gave us some numbers about what the players are doing on the site. And I find that to be a pretty fascinating subject. For the most part, when you guys go out there and you look at like what's happening in D&D world, you don't really get a lot of concrete numbers. You get like some polls that kind of say what people preferentially believe and all that stuff, but you don't get good concrete data. So when I saw this, I thought it'd be fun to talk about because not only did it surprise me, in some areas I was really surprised. What did you guys think about these numbers?
They were interesting. When we originally discussed the article, I wasn't expecting it to be what it is.
Yeah.
I kind of thought they might talk about like how many people used it and how many people stopped using it throughout the year. But of course, that was not what it was on there at all. It was other stuff.
Yeah, nobody's
No.
divulging subscriber stuff.
Well, it would have probably been interesting to see those kind of things, but obviously D&D Beyond isn't going to be like, that OGL debacle when everyone had that major campaign about
for some reason I thought they might mention that we lost this many subscribers, but I guess it was naive.
No, this is
back 3 months later.
This is more the lighthearted version of like, what were people doing on the site? Because obviously they would be like, there was this month where we lost 700,000 subscribers.
I was going to say, Jeff, obviously they didn't get them back, or that probably would have been in there. And then we had a decline in blah, and then we had an uptick.
Depending on the corporate, whoever had to approve all of that, they just may have said we're not delivering any bad. We're not acknowledging any bad news.
But you know what?
The Hasbro stock price may go down, so we're not mentioning anything that could potentially be negative.
I get it, and I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that might be in there. Like after I thought about it, I was like, "Well, that was dumb, Brent." Why would that stuff be in there?
Mike is really excited to read all these investor emails. I wonder why. No, like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think about reading some of those business relation emails that or reports on how businesses are doing can be fun. I think that's probably more of a Jeff pastime and hobby.
That probably is
than a me. I just enjoyed this because it actually kind of showed you what other people were doing with the game, and much like what they did with Roll20 when Roll20 was being so generous as to share their player stats and who was playing what game and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was really cool to see. I mean, not to say that like those people that were like D&D is the most played game, and then they show the Roll20 stat and they're like validated. I mean, that's not why it was interesting. It was just interesting to see how.
No, it was interesting. Like I said, it just wasn't what I expected at first. And then, like I said, I kind of had that self moment where it's like, oh, you're stupid.
Nah.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. So I was nonplussed. I wasn't surprised, but I also was like, okay.
I'll get to the most
humans.
I'll get you to the thing that I thought was most interesting about it later.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
So no, but I mean, so it was really kind of a fun look at what people were doing and everything like that. And also, having been a D&D Beyond subscriber for a long time before I terminated my subscription last year.
Before that thing happened.
I guess you won't. I'm not going to make you guess as to which side of the fence I fell on. But one of the things that I had always kind of wondered about D&D Beyond is it felt like as a marketplace, it was severely limited because once you purchased your content within their system, it just really didn't go anywhere. You had to go through the D&D Beyond, like their repository for your books, which was fine, but it didn't really translate into anything. And what I found is that they actually have the maps in alpha, or at least the last thing I saw was that their maps were in alpha. Probably going to be going to a much more developed state and everything like that, because they had put 180 million characters or NPCs on their maps and stuff like that. That's insane. That's just nuts. And I think it's really cool because I did actually look at the maps and it looks like exactly what I was hoping it would be. You could import maps from adventures, you could it works like many of the other major virtual tabletops. Obviously, this I don't think is what they envisioned for the 3D virtual tabletop that they were doing. But as just a general, like, hey, I need a quick battle map that represents what I'm doing in this adventure that I purchased. It's nice to be able to take that and use it somehow without having to like strong arm it into another VTT
Yeah,
because it's not like your purchases transfer between D&D Beyond and Roll20 or
right.
Foundry or whatever it is. So,
Well, yeah, and it's nice that they provided a resource that you could actually use in a game fairly effectively. Like the maps are something that you could always find a reason to use some sort of map in a game, most likely, if you're playing that type of game.
yeah. Although what I did like is on the maps comment that they made is that they said like 88 million monsters were fought or befriended. I was like, when was the last time you guys got a battle map out to befriend a monster?
That's a good point.
Yeah, honestly, I never thought about it like that.
Well,
I'm not sure anybody should, but
well, it depends.
feel free.
Are they still considering those poor goblins and drow and kobolds that aren't necessarily evil anymore? Are they still considering all of those monsters still?
I mean, it really depends on how you want to tackle each of these individual encounters and stuff like that.
Because there has been many a game where I've tried to befriend a horde of kobolds. So
how were you at that? How did that go?
well, poorly, but I still tried. I was going to lead them to victory. God damn it!
You were going to rise up there as the kobold leader, the messiah, and
a small
take
army
them
of
to a new
kobolds.
heralded age.
A small army of kobolds. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So the next thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that this was an interesting point, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know how well D&D Beyond, how much that reflects the greater community, but I thought it was fascinating that the average current level was only like 4 3/4. Like, where is that?
That is the one part that I was most interested in. That means no one plays the game higher than level 5 about.
No, I think you're missing something even before that.
Oh yeah,
because there were 180 million characters or NPCs played. 180 million, and 88 million monsters were fought. So each player fought slightly less than 1/2 of a monster,
or befriended.
So it's D&D. How were they leveling? Did they just get in the map and just talk the whole game?
I mean, they're not leveling. They're only level 4. 4
Yeah,
3/4.
exactly.
You have to fight more than 1/2 of a monster.
They're level 1 to 5. They're not.
But that's what's really interesting to me about that is because I mean I know we had talked a lot about the MCDM stuff and they had said like, well, what are the wasted levels? I mean, if it was like level 9 or 10, I would feel like there were a lot more, like the bell curve would probably take it and you'd have tails off in here. But I wonder, like, I feel like the percentage probably is, if it's at 4, there's a lot between 1 and 5, and then it just tapers.
There's probably a lot between
bad.
1 and 2.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Like the first 3 levels are absolute waste. I will always contend that that's true. And then it doesn't need to go to level 20. Like there's no like I don't think I think it proves a point that like most people don't play in super high levels in D&D.
And are those levels the fun levels? Because I mean, at this, I think one of the hardest parts that I've had with higher level play is that players get fairly wild the higher you get. Like their abilities, especially if like a wizard or something like that, where their utility can be very challenging, because you obviously don't want to create challenges to directly counteract a player's abilities. But when you see like a wizard, I mean, obviously a wizard can use the knock spell and open that door that you were like, haha, I'm clever. Or, a rogue can also pick a lock, but it's just knock is just such an easy thing to, the spell slot is extended,
but everybody's playing fighters, rogues, and barbarians, so you don't really have to worry about wizards very much, according to the list.
Wizard was 4th. It beat out Paladin.
Right,
so.
It did, but I don't get it because they also say everyone's like marshals are the worst class to play. Like that's what everybody says, and they're the 3 most popular characters on D&D Beyond. Like, are people just making D&D Beyond character like fighters in D&D Beyond and going, "Oh, I hate it so bad"? Like, is that happening?
Honestly, I think it's people who don't play a ton. Like, I think it's beginners. Like people convincing their friends to come in, and like, if you aren't somebody that's steeped in role playing and all of your knowledge is from fantasy books and movies and television series, you're probably playing a fighter or a rogue or a barbarian, because those are the majority of the protagonists. They're the people who get stuff done.
Yeah, it's just funny to me because
they don't sit in a room for 40 years and read. That's not a fun role play.
Well, and also I think that when you look at
I don't know, I enjoy sitting in a room and reading books personally.
Well, we know you do.
Is there a library in town?
Yeah, there's. I mean, that translates to your gameplay experience too.
Oh God, that's a story. We should have a whole episode about talking about libraries. That's what we should do. That story is worth some time.
Man, if I was a better GM, I would have found a way to make those libraries interesting. But I was like, what are you trying to do at a library? You're like, I just want to research the world and all this stuff. And I'm like, you mean I have to just do like a lore dump? Like, what's happening here?
Okay, listeners, here's something funny about this whole story. So I played an illiterate barbarian in this game, and the other 2 guys in every town we went to said, we need to go to a library. My illiterate barbarian was not super helpful in a library, oddly enough, where we spent 2/3 of the campaign.
And it was weird because it's not like, I mean, I could only give so much lore before I was like, you guys need to actually do something.
I believe you started saying stuff like, you move into town and the library had burned down. So don't ask.
It was a freak arsonist that's one step ahead of you every town you get to, and that really should have been the game. That should you guys hunting down the arsonist, burning down the libraries. It
is a funny story, especially knowing the people involved. I was not playing in the game, but if you think that you would like to hear the entire story and have Mike and Brent relive their campaign, leave us a comment down below.
Oh
man, too dramatic.
I could talk about it for quite a while, I think.
But you know, I think honestly the reason why these other classes may be more selected, and I mean some of the, like a wizard versus barbarian, I mean, I don't know, I can't say, but that's like just 50,000 characters, right? It's not a huge number. But like
fighters are over 300,000.
Well, yeah, but fighters is definitely in the lead, and I think it's just because it may be perceived as an uncomplicated class.
Well, Rogue is over 300,000 too. All 3 of the top 3 classes are all over 300,000 people.
Yeah, but Wizards in the mid 200s. I mean, that's not bad.
It's not a steep drop off or anything.
Well, it's not as steep. Is it? Like, one of the things I referenced was Baldur's Gate 3, because obviously Baldur's Gate 3 was a fairly interesting D&D endeavor last year, and I love Baldur's Gate 3. All the patches they did and everything like that. When you look at that, if you look at the class choices in there, did you guys see what the number 1 class was for Baldur's Gate 3 when they released their infographic kind of back towards the beginning?
Is it Paladin or Warlock? I don't remember.
It is Paladin, and not by a small margin. Like, Paladin was up near the 250K mark, and Sorcerer, really? The next class that was in there, was down.
Oh, Sorcerer was the next one. Yeah,
was down in the 180K.
But yeah, so have you looked at any Baldur's Gate builds on YouTube though?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, take a level of Sorcerer. Like, what was one guy's? He was like, I'm going to show you how to build the most badass Warlock ever. But you're not going to start as a Warlock. You're going to start as a Sorcerer. And like, it's the worst like video gamey like.
Oh, don't get me wrong. People like. People do it in D&D too, and I'd be curious if that influenced some of these class choices, is because, you know, like, people dip into fighter for certain benefits and everything like that for everything. So it might be that you have a lot of level 1 fighter multi-classes with other things.
Maybe that could be.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of barbarian fighters, fighter barbarians.
Yeah, and it just doesn't really qualify any of this stuff. But what you can say is that I was surprised as shit to see that fighter was the number 1.
I don't know. Like, I'm really surprised too, because like I said, everybody talks about how martials suck, but I guess you're probably missing the later levels where wizards become outpace outpace the marshals too. Marshals are probably marshals are better at lower levels, so that I guess that makes sense if you're only playing level 5.
Well, and I think they
it's
have
not
some
just
pretty
human
broken...
fighter. It's not just fighters, Mike. It's human fighters named Bob.
It's true. It's true.
That's me extraplanating the data a bit, but
statistically, there's a
it's
lot
human
of
fighter
low-level,
named Bob.
a lot of low-level human fighters out in the world named Bob,
which is kind of a weird thing because you know, I mean, and I don't want to say anything, but I feel like the number of human low-level fighters named Bob, I'm just like, isn't this game about creativity? What happened here? So, I did find that
what really makes that funny for all of the viewers, a little bit of another peek behind the curtain here, is that Jeff and I threatened to name everybody in the town in our Fallout game Bob, and then I pulled this up and I was like, oh, it's the most common name on
yeah.
So there was an added layer of funny to that to me.
Yeah. Mike told us. He said, so as the GM, I'm just going to say, you meet an NPC. Tell me about them. And we had to make up the NPC on the spot. And so Brent and I were like, well, they're all going to be Bob.
There's going to be a lot of Bobs in this town.
Well, and anybody that's interested, you can watch our Fallout with a Bang or a Whimper playthrough. And they actually did name the first NPC that they met Rob Bobberts or some... What was that, Jeff?
It was Bob and
Bob Roberts.
Yeah, Bob Roberts.
I call him Bob.
Two Bob.
I was like, you're just getting ahead of the curve because now you have more Bobs than names than NPCs. So, geez. But it was also...
Well, we don't have to worry about him anymore.
Yeah, it's
spoiler alert.
Yeah, don't have to worry about two Bob for reasons that you'll have to watch to find out. But yeah, no, I thought this was kind of neat to just see. I mean, it wasn't a ton of information. It definitely wasn't as deep as I thought it would be. I mean, they did have the average age of characters created was 28. Kind of a strange sweet spot. I mean, obviously not any age modifiers or anything along those lines, but you know, it's just... you guys, when you guys roll up a character for D&D or when you were rolling them up, do you guys remember what age you typically put?
I know in the old days I used to look at, because they used to publish like the age ranges.
Mm-hmm.
Like for elves, it's like 1 to 60,000, and they're, they get out of their teens at 18,000. So I would go, I don't know, 19,247.
Yeah.
Like young-ish because you're starting your career. But now I just generally pick something in the 20s unless I'm trying to play somebody older for a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, you run into that problem with D&D when you have to try and kind of build a character who's done very little in their life to have active skills, but has gone through enough horror to want to go out and fight monsters for a living. So I try to balance an age of trauma to life experience to where they're gonna traumatized enough to be like, I need to go out and put myself in the most dangerous situations that are ever going to happen to a person, and I don't have any experience doing this. That's the age range I kind of shoot.
Kind of an intersection that you hit. And you're like, okay, well, I'm level 3, so I should probably move this slider a little bit to give him some more experience.
Exactly.
But that does move me up the trauma scale just a little bit too.
Yeah.
So I gotta add some nervous ticks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And honestly, if I did have a request for people, is I think that they should do these kind of things. I think that it would be nice for Roll20 or these other communities that have these kind of digital, these digital, I guess, the information available digitally like this, that it would be neat for the community to kind of see how it went. And I know that other games do this too. I remember World of Warcraft at one year when they were doing the Legion expansion mentioned that like this world quest had been completed 1 million times. And, and I think people just find it kind of nifty to kind of see what these numbers are, because when this got released, the one for Baldur's Gate, and they said, oh, people have cumulatively played over 1,225 years of Baldur's Gate. Like that's
that was really interesting. Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I contributed to that number, but like, it's just, you just see the scale of how much time that really is. 10 million hours.
Yeah, I always flinched a little when I looked at my played time in like World of Warcraft. I was like,
Well, what was your Borderlands playthroughs? I mean, obviously you played those.
We don't talk about these things.
We don't talk about Borderlands.
Nor do we talk about Elden Ring and the fact that I have one 300 level character and several 250 level characters, which is hours and hours of wasted time.
You know what? You like what you like. No one's going to take that away from you. I don't think.
Oh, they could take Elden Ring away. It'd be okay.
The part that I did laugh about is, did you see that players spent a combined 88 years in character creation?
I didn't see that.
No, how did I miss that?
And that was on the infographic, and I thought it was actually kind of funny because there was a one note that I saw on Baldur's Gate 3. This is about Baldur's Gate 3, not about the D&D Beyond. Is that apparently a number of people, 10% of characters, spent at least 1 hour in the character creation screen. And the first thing I said to myself was, how the fuck do you know that? Are you on my computer? Are you watching my every fucking click? What is happening here? And I felt like my privacy was invaded because I might have been one of those people when I went through it the first time.
Why not? Have fun.
Well, you just have to read everything because, it is a video game, right? So you have to understand like how did they gamify these classes and everything like that? Because there definitely were classes and combinations that were much better than other classes and combinations. And then when you found out they all had different dialogue trees that they could utilize in certain things, like, I mean, I made a lot of characters. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of fun in the game.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things. That was one of the things about 4th edition I really liked, is they had a character generator, like a real character generator, and like playing with that was like a lot of fun. Like just making different characters and trying different stuff. Like that was really neat. And so I think anytime you're a GM or a player, like making characters sometimes, like, I don't know, it's just fun. Like you just have a lot of ideas and be like, oh, this guy will be cool, and then you just go in and make him, and then like, he's cool. Maybe I'll play him someday.
Do you think people like you are the reason why the average level is 4.77 in D&D Beyond?
Maybe. I mean, it's possible. There's 1,000,001 level 1 characters out there.
Yeah.
And I do think it was also funny, to change the subject a little bit, I do think it was also funny. It said that the most popular claimable item, like claimable thing of 2023 was Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves collection, which is free.
Like, well, I mean, these are, I thought they were all free or something like that. It's just that it seemed as though when it coincided with the movie, and it seemed as though people were really excited about the movie. And I think that there's something to be said, because I mean, when we talked about it, I felt like Honor Among Thieves was a good movie for what it was. I was surprised that it was as good as it was. You watched it too, didn't you, Brent?
I did.
Yeah.
It was watchable. I wouldn't call it good.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
I had fun.
It was fun. It was fun. I
have not rewatched it.
I
at some point maybe I will. Like I wouldn't be opposed.
I saw it twice. I went to the theater to see it because I was able to get early tickets, and then I saw it at home and that was just so I could watch it again and be like, was this really, did I enjoy it in the theater because I was with people that were also enjoying it? And so it was kind of like that, that effect where you're like,
matters.
It's I was like, well, maybe it was just because I was with
home alone on your couch and hating it.
I do think upon consideration, I do think it was better than Rebel Moon, though, if that helps anybody's decision on watching that movie.
I haven't seen Rebel Moon, but based on what I've heard, actively watching one of those fireplace videos where it's just the crackling fire on your TV screen for 3 hours is better than Rebel Moon.
I think Rebel Moon is funny because like it's seriously like somebody wrote a role-playing scenario and like gathered the players together, and that's the movie.
Well, I mean, but maybe, I don't know. I wanted to watch Rebel Moon, and I literally started it, and I got about 5 minutes in before I just was like, nope, I'm gonna have to do it another time. Wow. I mean, I'm usually the guy that kind of like flocks to sci-fi and fantasy stuff, like a moth to a flame. So the fact that I just wasn't interested, I don't know if I was in the wrong state of mind, but I haven't gotten into it, and I couldn't go back to it. So
it's not written very well. And I feel like the D&D movie is maybe written better, which is a thing.
Jeez. And not to say that Zack Snyder hasn't done good stuff. It's just maybe
no, he has. I would watch the D&D movie Honor. I would watch D&D Honor Among Thieves again before I would watch Rebel Moon again. For sure.
Well, that's a recommendation right there. No, I'm kidding.
It is kind of.
But I don't think, unfortunately, enough people watched the D&D movie, and I think it financially it probably wasn't the golden goose they had hoped it was.
No,
that's fair.
Yeah. So even though there was the most popular claimable, they should have got their friends to go watch the movie in the theater. Is really what that should have boiled down to.
Can we talk about the thing that bothered me the most in this whole article?
Yeah. What was that?
Sure.
Take a look at any of the charts that have numbers like species. The first line is a gap of 20,000, then 20,000, then 20,000, then 20,000, then 20,000, then 100,000, then 300,000, then 200,000. And I understand they're trying to flatten the graph by doing that, but
what you're saying is the fact that
somebody who
Aarakocra
values data, it's deceptive, is what it is. It's
so what's really hilarious about that is like every other comment on this article is exactly the same thing.
Oh, I bet. No,
if
the
you're
people
gonna
it
make a
bothers,
graph,
it really bothers.
if you're gonna make a graph, try and know what you're doing. Is a lot of the comments.
Yeah, like when you go to species, because like the Aarakocra at the one end is basically under 80,000, and human is at like 700,000.
And they're almost the same height. Yeah,
and they're like really close height wise in the
they were flattening their graph.
And even like between human and elf, I mean that the distance doesn't look that far, but obviously one is closer to 500,000, the other one is above 700,000.
Anytime you make a graph, your scale should be consistent for every point, for every line across there. It's got to be the same. It's got to be the same gap, or nobody can draw anything from your pretty graphic.
What does lineages mean? Is that like half elves, half orcs? Like they just lump them all together?
Or other custom ones.
Well,
like
no, because half elves
created their own thing.
No, because they have custom lineages, and then they have lineages, and they have half elves in here.
Oh, they have both lineages and so maybe lineages is all the other races that aren't listed before that, and custom ones are really whatever, like where people went off the rails and went with something that isn't even in any of the books or something.
Don't know. Kind of interesting though.
Yeah, that's it. That is a little, and I understand this was a fun article. This was not a in-depth deep dive into the data, but like when you're presenting it, let me see. And if you're going to have vague descriptors, let us know what they mean.
Well, and honestly, I bet it means something, and we just haven't played D&D for so long that it's not clicking for us, if that makes sense. Because I feel like I feel honestly like lineages, like they think that's what they kind of did with the I just logged into my thing to see if I could
so I looked something up, and it said standard lineages, which is the normal like dragonborn, dwarf, elf, gnome, half elf, half orc, etc. And then there's custom lineages, which is of course people that make their own. Then there's exotic lineages and monstrous lineages. I think it's just everything else. I think it's just everything that was smaller than
everything that's not already listed or custom.
Yeah, exactly. Everything that's not Aarakocra or did worse than Aarakocra.
Right.
Except custom stuff.
Yeah,
which custom stuff, of course, it's going to be lower than anything else because like one guy's house game, homebrew game has it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I didn't actually take too much time to think about what was going to be in lineages or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean,
and obviously Artificer is the class that gets cut for the next edition. Obviously,
well, yeah, I mean, it's almost half the size of Monk if I'm reading the scale right. Like nobody's playing Artificer,
which is too bad. I like Artificer
because nobody plays Monk.
Me too. Yeah, and then monks aren't very popular either, which is also a surprise, I guess.
Well, I don't think it's a surprise. I mean, now I'm not a guy that does anything with the like the 3D6 community. And if you guys don't know what the 3D6 community on Reddit is, it's basically the math people that like to like super optimize the hell out of stuff. And there was actually a couple of different groups that have put together what they consider like flagship builds and everything like that. And I haven't, I was looking, and since I'm not really part of these communities, I haven't really seen a flagship build that included a monk. As you may guess, Warlock tends to be in a lot of them. Paladin, Sorcerer. They tend to be combinations.
The ones where you can do
those
broken
kind of
dips. Yeah,
What's that?
or the broken dips. You do the
Mhm.
1 or 2 level dip just to get this.
And a lot of these are kind of assuming that you played it all the way till level 20 or something like that.
Okay.
And so, I mean, some of them, tend to be front loaded as to where they're effective, and other ones tend to be a little bit more effective on the back end. But the 3D6 community, if you are interested in optimization and kind of finding out what the right choices for D&D are in terms of like the most optimized character, you can really find some builds there that are neat in theory, kind of like a game theory thing, that maximize the rules, but may not necessarily be the best character thing to play, if that makes sense. So, to each their own. Play
As
the game
always,
how you want to play it.
before using an optimized build, make sure you talk to your GM.
Well, yeah, because I mean, some of these optimized builds are like stupid good. Like if you just had 2 people, one had an optimized build and another one didn't, like you might see some very different gameplay. So let's just say, why are you so good at combat? Well, the entire internet mathematically figured out why I do the most damage per round.
Exactly.
So I guess with that, I mean, I think it's just, like I said, a fun topic. So if anybody's listening at this point, if you can go ahead and put out more infographics about what's happening in your community, the types of decisions that are being made, at least do it a year thing. I mean, follow the Spotify, Apple Music, everybody that does like your yearly wrap-ups. I mean, you got the data, share it. Tell us what we're doing. Tell us how the community's playing, all that kind of stuff. We enjoy it.
Give us content to make fun of you about it.
Oh, there's a motivator. That's going to get them all to
do it. Do it. Yeah, something like that. But I think that's good. Interesting enough topic to chat about.
It was interesting. It was interesting. Like I said, it wasn't what I thought at first, but after I read it, it's pretty interesting. And I do think,
article.
And I do think there's some good in there. If you play D&D, you should definitely give your character some levels. That's what I think I learned from the whole thing. You should let your players be higher level.
As much as we poke fun, there are still millions of people at least interacting with D&D Beyond at some level. So there's a lot of players out there. Things are kind of healthy right now. Find a group, play a game, have some fun.
And their GM should give them more levels. Like, I mean that.
Well, and find a GM that makes sure you get levels. I mean, that's it's kind of a weird piece of advice.
Not the GM that's like, no, I'm not really giving you any experience for that.
Magic items? No, I'm not going to give that to you.
Whoa. We're doing milestone leveling here, so you level up when I say you level up.
Magic items, they don't exist in this world.
That didn't qualify as a milestone, unfortunately.
Yeah, these mile markers are pretty far apart.
It's good job. Good job beating that Tarask, guys.
I didn't think you could do it at level 1, but but it's not a milestone. You weren't supposed to do that encounter. That was a freebie encounter that you gave me for nothing. So
the king appreciates you, but he doesn't give you anything.
He gives you a thank you card. Thank you. Jeez. Okay. Well, we've deviated off topic. Jeff, do you want to tell us tell people how to get a hold of us? And Brent, do you want to send us into the wild blue yonder?
Yeah, if you would like to interact with us on social media, look for @Rollwise on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, or YouTube, or you can email us rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, thank you for joining us, even though this episode was a little silly. Hopefully you guys had fun. And again, we don't mean to hate on D&D so much, but it is funny sometimes. So please roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Before Mike says anything.
See you guys.
See you guys.